So now we are going to start our panel. So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. So you have a minute each to describe who you are. And for those who were there the whole day, you know them already. But for those who are just coming, it's going to be interesting. So go ahead.
1, 2, 1, 2. Working. So hello everyone, my name is Jakub Marek. I'm head of big data and monetization at SuperScale. And SuperScale, we are helping studios to basically scale their games as much as possible. And my role in here is mostly building the BI systems and delivering on the live ops, especially on the personalization of special offers.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Casey. I'm the Senior Product Manager at Jagex, working on RuneScape and old school RuneScape. I look after the player life cycle, the commercial performance of the game. Optimization for mobile is a big focus at the moment. And yeah, just taking a game that's 18 years old and bringing it to a new audience.
That's crazy. I'm Patrick McGrath. I'm a product lead of June's Journey at Wooga, and based in Berlin. It's a hidden object game, but yeah, kind of just running the product, really looking both at the creative and the business side, making sure that the growth is sustainable and we can have a 18-year game. Although that's impressive.
And for me, I'm Mark Val, so I'm taking care of PlayFab as engagement as part of Microsoft. And I welcome all of you to this awesome panel about live ops. So our first subject for today is, so live ops has been growing in the years, we saw that. And it's more or less about which game trends do you see that comes more and more with live ops, and where this is going in terms of, like in a year or 2 years from now, which type of games should we expect to have more live ops in them? You want to start first?
Sure. Oh boy, that's the trend for live ops. I think almost all games. I mean, you look at Fortnite, right? Console is, traditionally you spend the $60, you get a game. Just run through it, play it a ton, and Fortnite is even kind of piggybacking off of what they saw with the Warframe and some of the other large titles that went to free-to-play. But even with that, I would say an even bigger trend outside of it just running free-to-play and live ops as a business is just segmentation and more personalization. So, we have millions of players in our game, and they have different needs and desires, and making sure that they are getting the things that they want and need, and making sure that value proposition is just as strong as possible for that individual.
Yeah, and for us, we're coming from a PC game, but we've looked to mobile to give us inspiration for how to kind of innovate in live ops, and particularly things that a lot of you guys will take as your bread and butter, like time-limited events. We've introduced into RuneScape. Really interesting effect from doing things like that. We've seen increases in some of the other KPIs, like our daily active users, really improved when we started introducing those sort of new mechanics. So we're really interested in kind of taking inspiration from other parts of the industry.
And do you see the players migrate from PC to mobile, or they just continue their session? So,
yeah, so this is more about following the kind of lifestyle pattern of our players. As they've got older, they tend to have less time to spend on games, so we're competing with other games, and mobile particularly. So really it's about us rethinking our strategy to allow for people to play the game in sort of bite-sized chunks and smaller sessions, which is something, we're seeing a lot of success with. And then after that's finished, they tend to come back to desktop to play for longer periods.
So from my side, definitely the personalization, as Patrick have said. It is something that we've seen work with the direct optimization of in-app purchases. But when you take, for example, events and like monthly calendars, etc., we in our games ourselves we have 5 games that are doing practically like day-to-day live ops in terms of events as well. What we see a lot is that there are segments of players that are just, they have different activity they have different needs over the time as they play. And what this results is that there is probably some cool reward at the end of the tree, but the players just can't get to it. And usually the live ops systems are set up in a way that you need to pay with retention, that you just cannot skip through the content. And these players just probably, I was one of those players sometimes, I just didn't feel the satisfaction because I just couldn't get to the reward. And I think Fortnite example is pretty neat one, because live ops in Fortnite a lot of the times is done that it targets multiple player personalities, and for example, you don't have to fight for the victory royale. You just can go to the crater and fight for, I don't know, collection of letters. And a lot of personalities can then find something that they enjoy, and I think this is the way for also more casual games to move forward.
And we also saw in Fortnite, I don't know is there any Fortnite players? Raise your hand. All right, well, okay, a few, all right, cool. I've played Fortnite. But I don't know if you played when they released the Marvel movie where you can be Thanos, right? So what they did is that they took the gameplay, normal Fortnite, and then they made a new version of it where you can be Thanos against everyone. So there was one player against 99. And personally, like me, I very much love hardcore modes. I just love to invest stuff and have the fear of losing everything. And when you were Thanos and you see all these little lemmings around you just shooting at you, it was very impressive. And where I want to go with this is that the game itself took an IP, right, literally, and put it in the game, make a new game mode, and after like the promotion time of the movie, they just killed it. It was done. It was freaking fantastic, right? So I think we're going to see more and more of these things, and also more UGC system as well, like you were seeing with Roblox and all these things are pushing it very well and putting live ops on top of it, or even Minecraft, which are going in that direction as well. So we're going to go to our second subject, which is going global. So going global, there's a lot of steps that you have to put in place before even thinking to go global. So I would like to go through all of you again, maybe going from Jakub this time. What do you think are the necessary steps before going global, and what does it mean to go global?
So just to clarify, going global in the sense of scaling the live ops specifically after the game is already launched and doing it globally, or?
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah. Well, definitely the localization it's a huge one. We've struggled with it in some of our games when we don't have enough resources to localize everything properly, and especially in games like in the Hopa genre or games that are just story-based games. So this is one thing that's just straight up preventing one game for going into global. And in terms of actual content, I think just better understanding of the cultures and basically what players enjoy across different countries. Like there are things happening, for example, in Japan that I just don't understand, and games just shooting up in ranks. We just had Rumble Stars, which is a game that was very successful in Japan. 75% day one retention, not from one cohort, but during 1.5 weeks, and it was something that nobody could predict. And this is in the end the trend that you need to, I guess, talk to people and to have really an insider from across the countries to see what works for, again, different kind of people.
Yeah, we've had a similar kind of challenge with especially localization. We've got a game with something like 2 million lines of dialogue and quest text, so not straightforward. We're also battling against sort of quite old systems for displaying fonts.
Does RuneScape run in China or Japan? Or?
It does run. It's not currently localized in all those languages, so we're currently localized in 4. And old school RuneScape is only in English at the moment, but we're looking to outsource some of that activity to help with that, to make it a bit easier for us to achieve. And I think that will help. We're also really interested in emerging markets where there's a potential for growth there, places like the Middle East and India where we've not really penetrated there. But the technology with mobile and stuff now is meaning that we can go into those markets in a way that we've never even considered before.
And will you put teams only to manage those places, or you still manage that from your main office?
It's still sort of early stages in that. We need to sort of do the market research exercise first and just evaluate the opportunity, and then as needed we'll sort of set up for it.
Yeah, you're thinking kind of how 8-Ball Pool, I think yesterday had a talk about how they had specifically approached India and ran India-specific events. I definitely I look forward to when we're doing that on June's. But as far as going global, we actually, I mean, it really depends kind of what situation you're in. June's Journey launched 18 months ago. Wooga had layoffs about 4 months later. We were purchased about a year later. And so, kind of looking in hindsight, if we had the resources of Playtika, I mean, we would have immediately gone to all of these countries, but it was part of our growth strategy to kind of roll out to new countries like the Cyrillic languages, Turkey and Russia, which were really big for us. And now we're looking at APAC, but again, it just depends on the resources. And as you talk about like localization or transcreation, depending on what kind of game you have, because you want to make sure that this saying that keep your eyes peeled. Well, that doesn't translate so well to other non-English languages. They're thinking, why the hell am I gonna like tear my eyelids off? And then even going into Japan or Korea or China, I mean, there's some very real conversations around even art styles, right? Could be too Western and trying to find the right publisher or even partner to publish your game out there and make sure that it's correct is it's a lot of work. But certainly I think games of the future, like you can't ignore China, you can't ignore like the value that Japan and these other emerging markets, India, like these are just too big.
Yeah, I think the cultural relevance thing is a really important point. We've got a game that's kind of laced with sort of Anglo-centric humor and castles and knights of the round table and things that just are meaningless to certain countries, yet seem to resonate quite well in America.
So being cultural and respecting the culture of the consumers, respecting the players, the services is as a service is essential. And definitely when you have different gameplays, there's some that just cannot do simply by religious meanings.
I mean, even that, we have a game that has like apparitions or ghosts in it. China does not let that, I mean, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or they don't allow publishing of games with ghosts, but it was just a no-go. And it's like this weird thing where there's no like religious, like in India, herding a cow that's obviously something you wouldn't want to do, but ghosts in a game in China.
So we're going to have a problem with that then.
So do you have a cow level?
I think in old school RuneScape, the first thing you do is kill a cow.
All right. Very cool. So
definitely
you have to keep that in mind.
Refresh that part of the tutorial.
So then like obviously when you go global, and then you are at that phase. If you were in the talks earlier today, where you have this community, and the community, as we're trying to share with you, is that everyone has a different vision of how things are socially acceptable, and teams needs to be built in certain construction. And as we heard also at previous talk, is that especially from King, which is that each game that they have a different team operating them, and then they have totally different philosophy about how to manage a game, right? So what's your take on team building, and how do you approach your live ops strategy as part of that?
Well, for me, team building, we're a pretty small team, I think by many standards. So we're about, in sitting down at the office, 35. And so it was interesting to have these initial talks with Playtika, and I've been at Zynga and EA, where, I mean, they're very small. The 35 would be small there. And they were asking, okay, why, how do we grow your team? And kind of, there's always this duality. You get so big where you have to even add more people just for a layer of management of how big your team is. But then also the cultural kind of, just the culture that your team itself has built, right? You've been in the trenches for the last 3-4 years. The game has been live for only 18 months. It's a real family feel. So because we run so lean, there is a lot of overlap, right? The designers and engineers are talking with the PMs and the analysts about live ops, and we're trying to share as much information as possible. And so how do you grow that in a way that is meaningful to the team? Because, I mean, you're going to scare people off if all of a sudden you had 10 and it's just, it doesn't have that family feel. So this is actually an exercise I'm going through right now. How do we grow this team? But yeah, I mean, culture is a big part, at least for me.
And I think for us, we try to structure teams around objectives, and objectives change quite regularly. And I think it's really about how you manage that change. So it's not seen as constant pivot or change in strategy, but more that we're constantly evolving and we shape our teams around those objectives and even the KPIs that we use to drive the games.
So sorry, do you create large scrum teams to specifically this team only does this feature?
Yeah, so we'll have KPIs to which we'll create targets and objectives and key results from that, and we'll try to shape the teams to directly attack those. And that means that we're constantly kind of evolving and moving people around and just encouraging a kind of sense of agility, which works well with Scrum. So.
Well, we are in a bit different position because we are not developing games directly, so we are only helping as extension to the development team. And what we've seen, the biggest improvement actually in team building came from, and it may sound silly, but in the end, naming one person responsible for the actual live ops delivery, and letting one person decide what is actually going to be done. Usually it's a producer, but in some cases we've seen okay, this is the live ops person, and there is the producer as well, and the lead game designer, and nobody can agree on anything. And I think it's very important to get people on board. So for example, are we going to introduce monetization into some live ops? Some games are doing it just for the retention, and this introduce, if it's not resolved and people have different ideas, well, obviously it can lead to unnecessary conflict. So that was one of the things that we learned over time, that we try to help developers to create their team around basically one single person who is then in the end responsible for the major decisions.
And at PlayFab we meet thousands of studios worldwide, and I saw teams totally in burnout, right? The teams that are okay, well, it's just not working, and then you dig a little bit, and I found a pattern I want to share with all of you, is that often these teams that are in burnout is that they manage more than one game at a time. They manage multiple games, and then they have to take care of multiple players at the same time, and they just cannot. So they just do a lot of overtime, crunch work in the weekend, and one recommendation I would suggest is that really to segregate your teams per game. Or if the game is gigantic, then you go really per territory. That would be my suggestion. So now let's move to our other subject, which is about what this time? Oh, KPIs. So KPIs. So, okay, KPIs. This is such a top-level thing, right? So we all know KPIs. We all know you need to follow your RPP, your retention, and all these things, your conversion rate, your churn rate, your burn rate, and all. But today, in this live ops track, we saw super amazing graph and how to, like your RFM, I believe, segmentation, all these things. And there's various ways to come up with KPIs, and some are relevant, some are not. So I would like you to share really what is the 1, 2, 3 of fully understanding how your players are progressing through day 0 to day 30 to full LTV, if you can.
Yeah, sure. So this is a tough question. Thank you. In terms of obviously different games, like especially in genres, have different goals at different points in time. I think the biggest difference that can be seen is taking a game like something hyper casual, probably like Helix Jump or something. It's a very good retention at early. Probably the game is not going to be played a couple of years from now, versus a game like the card collection games where the focus is on collecting that can take players like 2 or 3 years easily. So depending on the genre, of course, the retention is always important. Something that we try to look out for is not looking specifically at conversion or RPU or RPPU, but looking at how the curve is actually developing. So does the game have enough content to support monetization from day 30? We had a great example now with one game. It's a tycoon style game, and what we've seen was that due to the like systems not being properly balanced, there was some inflation starting to build up from day 14 to 30, obviously depending on how players were active. And this inflation, what it caused flattening out of the curve. And if you think in terms of scaling your games, if you are not super lucky and your game doesn't go viral, or it just isn't featured all the time because it's liked by Google or Apple, then you probably need to do user acquisition. And when you are doing user acquisition, of course, the most important thing is, are we ROI positive? Are we burning money? Are we actually getting something in return? And for that, the growth curve, the cumulative RPU is one of the most important ones, actually. And not many people think of it like one of the most important ones because, well, you have 5% conversion, that is great, but how does it actually develop? Do you have content for scaling the campaigns? It would be, for me, the one.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so we have some pretty strange results from our KPIs. As you can imagine, we've got an average player lifetime of something like 7.5 years. So none of our graphs conform to what anyone would consider normal. But just at a kind of high level, we've kind of struggled a little bit with being very KPI focused, certainly around live ops and stuff like that. And we're really trying to be thinking about the game more in terms of player value. And how we present more value to players. So we're primarily a subscription-based service game. So, what amount of content is the right amount to get people to be engaged, and how does that then drive the KPIs that come as a result of making a good product? So yeah, it's an interesting one for us. Like our retention numbers are just pretty crazy. So it's hard for us to sort of compare them to sort of, more mobile and free-to-play games.
Have you guys come up with your own KPIs, like weird KPIs for?
I can't tell you the arguments I have with our analytics guys. Please, can we just call it this? And no, that doesn't work. So yeah, we have a fairly non-standard sort of set of KPIs that are quite specific to our game, but they're then more useful. So.
Yeah, I mean, for us, retention is key. Again, it comes to the genre, hidden object. Our demographics skew older and female. We're 70% female, on average, 50 years or older. So very different segment in gaming. But retention for us is absolutely key because the amount of content that we actually have in these games. I mean, right now, this week we'll release chapter 107, and on average it takes about 5 to 6 days to go through a chapter. So we got a ton of content. But I mean, we have players that just burn through that stuff very quickly, and We know that the long tail monetization will work because it does. We have a game that we previously had, Pearl's Peril, and doing lots of tests there. But I mean, for us, retention, and if you want to even go a little more granular, like engagement, because if you could get them to engage in specific ways and create that user behavior, you know you got the player entertained.
So we also learned today or heard about behavioral segmentation, which is that you have different type of players. You have players that will monetize. You have players that will retain. And depending on the type of game, we have to, what I suggest to you is to figure out how is the society of your game running and how you can profile each of those groups so that, you have leaders, you have people that likes to do what the leaders are saying, right? And you also have people that just wants to be at the top of the leaderboard. So you have to give them a leaderboard either by achievements, not necessarily that they have to pay for it. So that way you retain, right? And then they engage because they're going to do whatever they like. So going in that direction, yeah, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think I talked about it in the speech earlier. So we introduced a new KPI last year based around customer satisfaction, where we wanted to get a measure of just literally, are people enjoying the game, yes or no? Just a very simple read. So we kind of took a kind of binary thumbs up, thumbs down approach. And so when players log out of the game, they're presented with a screen where they can just say one click, happy, not happy. And we found this a really good barometer of kind of live player sentiment. And we got a much deeper sort of insights into how our players are feeling than some of the stuff we used to refer to, like social and Reddit and those kind of places. And this has become something we've adopted across all the products that Jagex have. So we've got it in both the RuneScape games. And it gives us a kind of, real live sense of, are we getting things right? Do players not like the current release? Stuff like that.
And that's applicable to any business, right? I'm pretty sure you went to either the dentist or you get out of a bathroom and there's this scale of happy face, like are you happy or not? And you just click on it and right away you have a KPI, right?
Airport security.
Yeah, that's correct.
But for you, so is this every session you log out, you give it the thumbs up, thumbs down?
It's an optional choice, so it just sits there. So
Yeah.
it's quite passive. So we're
Okay.
not actually asking people to do it. And we had various iterations where we were thinking of, putting something in the player inventory and stuff like that. But then we thought, we don't want to be intrusive with this. We want something light touch, otherwise players will just reject it and we won't get valid
It's
feedback.
interesting how you can slice that and just see
It's-
over the live
yeah.
ops, like what did good, what did
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Do you see big changes like over time in these responses?
It depends how much we annoy them. No, but in general, we see like trends of when we've got a good run of content, we see those numbers rising. If we've got particular events happening where players are really engaged, we see the number of people who vote goes up. So it gives us just a deeper read on stuff.
Yeah, so my suggestion to that is when you're in soft launch, just ask the people if they like it or not. Instead of trying to figure it out, like, my KPI is saying that they don't like it, but maybe they like it, right? You don't know. So maybe just putting a yes, no question is the dumbest great idea there is. So next subject is communities. So we heard a lot about communities today. Communities can then literally influence your game and your development. Empowering them is great. And but often you have no community. So where do you start? So when should we consider a community and when should we not?
Well, on June's journey, it was pretty easy on Facebook, especially given the demographics. The community right now is about 500,000 players on the page, and I mean it's to the point where they are breaking down A/B tests that we are running live. Like,
oh, that's good.
And communicating with each other, like depending on countries, and trying to like deconstruct this. Like every last thing that we change in this game, they're trying to deconstruct it, and which is a good and a bad thing. Like you have very active members of the community, and they want to know these things, and they're just so excited about the content, and they're kind of, like the evangelists, you know, almost the voice out to other players. But when they're not in an A/B test and they're being withheld from that, they're the exact opposite. They're the loudest people complaining about what you're doing. And
So when these people are complaining, they're like, okay, you know, why is this person having this option or this
Yeah.
boost or whatever? Do you come in and intervene and say, oh yeah, it's an A/B test?
Well,
Right?
so yeah, well, we haven't quite done that, but we actually found our most active members, kind of pulled them aside. We have our own group for these members, so we kind of keep them apprised, and even for new features, we'll talk to them about, you know, kind of get a little heat test with them, and just kind of keep them in the know. And so when they are coming up against other players that are being really loud, they are then, again, like our evangelists, like they're here to protect us. And since it's coming from the community and not from someone with Wooga in their title, it's just so much more meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, we run a lot of A/B tests, and in general, we try not to discuss the results or even the fact that we're running them with the community because it influences the results, so we try to avoid that. However, it's pretty inevitable. We've got very sort of savvy players. They can tend to spot these things a mile off, and they share it pretty much instantly. But yeah, we have kind of two approaches to community. So we have our old school game, which is the kind of the retro version for the real hardcore purists. And in that game, we make sure every single update to the game is polled with that community and needs to pass a 75% threshold. So we're quite rigid on that, and it means sometimes, you know, we don't release content that we're planning to. But I think currently it's something like 95% of the updates that were polled are now in the game. And then with RuneScape, we have a slightly softer approach there because we are more experimental. So we're engaging with the community through social channels, and all our moderators have got Twitter accounts. So it's much more like a two-way discussion where we want to get people involved and be empowered to have an influence on the shape of the game, but we don't have quite such rigid rules as we do with the old school version.
Does the new school monetize more through the communities than the old school?
Yeah, so because the old school version is from a time when that monetization literally didn't exist, nobody had heard of it. So that doesn't exist in that version of the game.
Got it.
And for us, I have like two examples from from what we've seen in community, and one was in Hillcam Racing 2. I've mentioned it briefly. We are monitoring Discord channels and Facebook groups, and during one set of iterations of offers, we are like, okay, let's give players their favorite car. And the favorite car was based on what we thought players would perceive as a favorite, based on like the engagement metrics. So players were playing it most of the time, and on top of that, they upgraded the most. And we started seeing complaints from basically the offer said that it's a favorite offer, favorite car offer. And we started seeing complaints that, all right, but this is not my favorite car. I just played it for the event or whatever. And so we had to change it. And so this was like some small example on like, even on like a special offer side when you really like don't use, like, apart from like negative feedback that you might be pushing on the side too much, you wouldn't expect it, right? And the next part is in Tank Slot, which is a free brawler similar to Brawl Stars. There is a lot of feedback, and people, like community, is super vocal about changes to the balance of cannons, because people get invested in one cannon. Of course, it's a gacha-based game. It takes time to get to a certain level, and like all the nerves, like communicating this properly, that's one of the biggest challenges there is, and not all studios have experience with this. So, but overall, I agree with all what you said also.
I would also, if you're on a product that does not have a community manager, it is worth its weight in gold. We didn't have a community manager, like an embedded community manager, up until probably June of last year. And
That was after how long you were live?
we were live for about, well, through soft launch, including soft launch, it would have been a year. But worldwide launch, it would be 7-8 months. The community grew, the team was trying to manage it, but really the way that you have to incorporate a community manager into how you run live ops, it's Yeah, certainly it's been massive for us, and we actually see KPI impact.
So did you lose control of the community, and that's when you said to yourself, okay, I need a community manager?
We never had control. Like, we knew that we needed one. It was just, it was a matter of convincing others that we needed it, right? Because unless you've actually seen the impact, it's just another headcount. Then what do? Just cruise Facebook all day and talk to people? But it's so much more than that, because it is a function of live ops and trying to pull the community back into the game. So it's.
So one stat I can share is that we made studies, and anyway, so what I want to say is that through community managers, you're going to have an uplift to 10 to 20% of your revenue right away. So it's totally worth the investment to get a community manager. Once your game is good, and then you have good retention and all these things, you're going to have an uplift in your profit over the year. So as a business, it's highly recommended to have a community manager. Tools. So tools are essentials to operate a live game. There's so many ways to do it. Some people only do the tracking, and then they do update, actual hardcore updates. Some others are doing micro updates and A/B testing, segmenting, and all these things. So what is the essential tool set that you need to do live ops?
I'll go first. For me, a sales system, a event system, A/B test system, of course, because boy, you would have no clue what's going on. In-game messaging. So essentially a CRM. Those four, at least for me, are right off the top of my head, like the most important. And unfortunately, it took us a little while to get these types of things, because you always go through the build versus buy, scenario planning and talk with leadership teams and whatnot about this. So traditionally, Wooga wanted to kind of build their own systems. Playtika has tended to buy. So even having the newer set of conversations of how new games move forward will be interesting. But for sure, just these are four things that you can't do without in modern day live ops.
Yeah, you said it much better than I could, but the tools that we need to operate our live ops are segmentation, pricing, and reporting. And we've had some struggles to get those things to integrate well with the game that the age that RuneScape is. So we've got extensive sort of back-end tools, but they're bespoke things that we've developed over the course of time. I wish we could just buy them in and bolt them on, because that would solve so many problems. But it's probably the CRM and segmentation tools that are the most powerful.
And pretty much almost nothing to add. I would just say that a lot of studios underestimate how difficult it is to actually build their own stuff, and how long of a way it is to actually get to the point that they've solved some A/B testing system and something that can push content into the game without going through the updates. And I would say that developers most of the time are really good at developing games, and the tool set is something a bit different. Of course, if you are a really big company, there are very big companies in game development, then it's different. But for smaller and medium-sized ones, we also try to recommend to our clients to use as much basically a modular approach, and to find the best tool that is already existing, because you are better. Your time is better spent probably developing new content for the game than developing a new tool for A/B testing, because there are just so many tools already there.
And that's a good point. It's about creating a fun game, not necessarily building tools, right? And but there's one thing I didn't hear a lot during this whole live ops track. It's about customer support, and usually the customer support tools are, can be extensive. So coming back to, do you have any customer support tools as part of hill racing too, or What do you do with that?
So Hillcom Racing 2 is actually kind of like, let's say, a special example. They have a proper tool set for customer support. At the same time, it's not as fast as you would sometimes like to be, and things like sometimes it happens that something in systems break and people don't get what they needed to get, or the validation systems will go off, etc. And pretty much it's a lot of manual work to go to backtrack what happened and give players what they wanted to have. And in general, this is something that, again, not a lot of developers understand, and even how it can ideally look like.
Yeah, because we should not forget that a whale that is frustrated that there's a bug in his account and that you cannot, help him out, this is gonna go away, and then you just lost, a ton of hundreds of dollars in the coming future.
At least. I mean, for us, we also have a help shift. So the tickets come in, and as you said, like you flag the people that are high value, and for us, it's not even just monetary value. If you've been in the game for 2 years and haven't spent, like there's still tons of value, because you're probably watching ads and probably bringing people into the game. But yeah, that is definitely one that I forgot where it's.
Yeah, we're in the process of really overhauling our customer support services and improving support tickets and account recovery processes, and wanting to have better systems that now allow us to talk directly to those players. The challenge for us mainly is integrating it with the customer back-end databases that were built a long time ago.
So we're up for the other subject, which is a game launch, right? So we've already covered a lot, but at one point you have to launch your game, and launching a game can be disastrous, right? Or it can be a big party. So what do you think is essential before you do your soft launch and you go worldwide afterwards?
I can't remember. So.
But for you, it's more about adding in new features. But we know with the polling and everything, which is good when you have a community. But when you have nothing, it's different, right?
Maybe I will start. So over the last 3 years, we soft launched and global launched between 25-30 games. And generally, going into global launch is something that sometimes takes too long. The essential things to go through soft launch, and it was mentioned on other talks, so I will keep it short, is to basically there are 3 phases, and the first one is just making sure that the technical aspect of the game is there, that the game is not failing on devices, specific devices, etc. When this is in place and you know that the technical aspect is not holding the game back, there is the retention phase, and again, you are soft launching in countries that should be relevant for the game. So if you are working on a super high LTV hardcore game, maybe just soft launching in Taiwan is not going to cut it. So the retention phase is we recommend spending usually our clients at least 1 month, because you need a reasonable sized cohort to get day 14 data at least. That's kind of like our cutoff. And then there is the monetization phase. And monetization phase, it then depends what is your budget, pretty much. In the end, you can stay for soft launch only until it's expensive in the end, because having the game globally launched and working on the like, for example, live ops system, we had this discussion not in the panel, but near the bar. It's bar. I mean the wall. So this is something that is not necessarily essential at the global launch, because people just the value in soft launch is just for in our opinion, for validating the core monetization systems. Because if they are not working, then it makes no sense to go to global. But if they are working, you can be pretty sure that you can add the other stuff on top of it later, so socials and, for example, like proper segmented live ops. Because if we are segmenting on small amount of users, then you might get skewed results. In the end, it's about how much you slice the pie.
So what do you consider being the critical mass?
For starting with the live ops?
That's correct, yeah.
I would say in tens of thousands of users. Maybe under 10,000 might make sense already. But if you are considering retention, like 10,000 of users is pretty much nothing. Like if your game has like standard retention, you have practically no one in the game. So it depends on how many people you are getting through daily. So I would say a couple of dozens of thousands would be like a good cutoff point. Because at the same time, most live ops events and systems come into play later down the line. So it's not the first thing that the users see, probably not on the first day or not on the third day most of the time, because players are just learning the core mechanics. So if you had 100,000 people, then maybe 20%, 30% actually interact with the more mid and late game system. So there's also one thing to consider.
And do you validate your CPI costs and all these things before the launch so that you can understand better your inflection point?
Yes. So regarding CPI, as I said, I think it's important. Most of the games need to rely on UA. We actually sometimes try to do, if it's possible, to do CPI tests before the game actually went into production. So with the CPI testing for the theme of the game. So this kind of gameplay. So basically, the fake gameplay video is created, and the creatives practically, and it can be done with static images as well. And we try to test: is the CPI lower with very like.
So
like
are you creating fake ads to test that out?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
So this is one of the approaches just to validate, because a lot of time, because it's a lot of cost that goes into the game development, and if you are developing something new, you would like to at least know that, all right, maybe this is a bad idea because, for example, the sci-fi genre or fantasy genre is like ridiculously hard to get in, and maybe doing the art in a bit different style can lower your CPI to the half. Even like we've seen these cases happen. So, and this is before the game actually goes into production. So there is never like there is no like never too early to start testing CPI. So it's and it should be standard during the soft launch, because it affects budgeting and affects basically how much you can scale eventually.
And we should not forget that a game is a business, right? It's entertainment, it's fun and everything, but it's a business before everything. So this kind of validation just prove your business plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you said almost everything. But yeah, it's a lot of risk mitigation through these validation releases, even releasing under some pseudonym studio, right? And having what you would consider a crappy build, but still trying to gain that data. And as you said, like even testing ads, like, yeah, it might be costly, but I mean, the real costly thing is developing this game and it's a dud, right? I mean, so just even before going to soft launch, just validating so much of these things, like where the story city like even impact, like, because there could be some like implications there. I mean, we do very much story driven stuff, so we've seen this like.
And this, what we're talking about, which is to create a fake ad, is being used by many businesses before they start. So they're gonna make a fake ad in the newspaper with the phone number for people to call, and then they just calculate how many calls they receive, right? And they're like, oh my God, there's demand, right? And demand drive business, right? So there's really cool things to read in the books to learn about. So so that's the last subject, more or less, for this panel. So yeah, where is this going? So I think I asked that initially, but where is this going? Like live ops as a whole is a profession, right? It's not. I mean, there's people that are very good at making good games, but operating a game is totally a different scenario. So what's your vision on where live ops is going?
I mean, for me, it's just going to proliferate beyond games. Like, there's lots of, I'm sure for many people, lots of non-traditional companies reaching out to them to gamify their app or their business or their product. And it really does work. I mean, look at Duolingo or, Khan Academy. Like, they actually hired product managers from within the industry. not like Elon Musk is in the news enough, but like he tries to hire game devs. Like there is a lot of value in being in this live ops atmosphere where it is constantly changing, and I think that more and more, yeah, we're just going to see it everywhere.
Yeah, and I think for me it goes, how do you take it beyond live ops and keep that conversation going with the players? So even if you're pushing out events or content, what are the other things you can do around that to keep that community engaged? Is it talking about competitions? Is it putting out videos? It's all those things that keep the players' attention coming back, and ultimately what represents value for them. So for us, we're really looking to how do we make sure people are really getting value for money, and that's a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe my personal feeling is that it's getting more and more important. There will always be a segment of players that just don't care too much for it. They're just happy with the core game. Again, seeing it across many of our games where people are engaged, but they are not engaging with live ops operation, like the events and tournaments. But over the time, it will be, I think, the essential part of all games. And as we discussed it many times here, game that doesn't do live ops is basically doesn't stand a chance practically in the long term.
So I want to bring a real life scenario where live ops went over the fence. So it's in the restaurant industry where there's a new book that got released about 3 months ago. It's about how to track your customers in the analog world, right? And so how they do it is that when a customer is new, so first you have to ask, are you new in the restaurant? And if they are, you put a red, like a napkin under their cup, so that everyone in the restaurant knows now that this is a new customer. So we have to treat it, very well and very nice and everything. And that at the end of the meal, you ask them, so do you had a good meal? And then they're like, yeah. So and then you give them a card for a free gift the next time they come. Like you're gonna have a free dessert or maybe a free pie or whatever. So when they come back, they have that card. So now you know that this is a returning customer, right? And then as they come in, and then they have this 50% off and everything. You're like, oh my God, this is great. And then you give them a third card, which is that if you come back a third time, right, with this other rebate, whatever you define, in the restaurant industry, there's this KPI, which is 75% of the customers who come 3 times will come 4 times or all the time after. So that was brilliant, right? So it's literally about tracking a player, tagging it, putting in the segments and all these things, validating your if you had a good time. So that's more or less live ops in real life. And live ops is going in education, it's going in healthcare as well, to take care of the patients and the students so that they grow up to learn information that they're actually looking for. So that's going to be very interesting. So for anyone who wants to capitalize on live ops, there's a very bright future for the next 20, 30, forever years to come. So I welcome you all to continue in that profession, definitely.
So all of you seeming to be in quite big teams. I'll look at you, sorry. You all seem like you're in quite big teams. We're in a team of like 10 people. We've got me, a designer, we've got one product owner. What sort of things, especially with KPIs, we've only got a certain amount of time we can look at that stuff. Is there any tools you can recommend? Is there any KPIs we should truly be focusing on? If we were to make a hire, is there someone that we should probably look at to help us with that sort of thing?
What genre?
We are sort of female-focused, casual, sort of town builder sort of thing we're looking at on mobile. Sorry.
And you want to know a specific KPI to look at?
Is there one we should be focusing on more than others? Is there tools out there that would help us build these graphs for us, to help us guide my designs?
And you guys are live right now?
We are not live right now. We are...
Soft launch?
Yes, about to, yeah.
Okay. I mean, for me, like we just discussed, like retention for me is always, that's key. And the way I even break that down is just like engagement and actually understanding where the engagement is coming from within the game. So without knowing too much about your game, I would certainly look at kind of the engagement or compulsion loops within what you have soft launching. And then just, depending on your monetization strategy and how that is integrated with kind of these compulsion loops, that's just like long tail. So, I mean, you should be able to make money and build on that, but it's fucking tough to build on retention.
And if you're focusing on monetization, then I think it's really important to get a handle on, how many people are paying. So not just your average per paying user, but what is your reach out of the free players? How many people are paying? How many people are first-time payers? How many people are going on to pay a second time? Those are probably really good places to start. And once you get a handle on that, it's a lot easier to build on it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, have a monetization strategy, right? Like, how do you get them converted? How do you upsell? And then how do you just repeat?
So what I can say is that if you're familiar with the game of baseball, it's like you hit the ball and then you have 1, 2, 3 and then go to the goal. Like to me, like the first base is retention, right? And then the second is optimization, and then the third is monetization, and the fourth is marketing, right? To have growth. So those are literally the steps. So obviously you don't launch again with bugs, right? And then second, it's really about like retention, but retention is a whole game on its own.
Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap it up. So thank you so much for everyone on the stage.